That's all you can do.
Committee on Homeland Security Subcommittee on Emergency Preparedness, Response, and Communications will come to order. The subcommittee is meeting today to examine federal counterterrorism support to high-risk urban areas. I appreciate the effort taken on behalf of all those involved to have this important field hearing take place, and I want to thank the College of Staten Island for hosting us. This is an official congressional hearing, so we must abide by certain rules of the Committee on Homeland Security and the House of Representatives. I kindly wish to remind our guests today that demonstrations from the audience, including applause and verbal outbursts, as well as any use of signs or placards, are a violation of the rules of the House of Representatives. It is important that we respect the decorum and the rules of this committee. I have also been requested to state that photography and cameras are limited to accredited press only. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. When I first met then Speaker John Boehner as a newly elected congressman in 2015, I made one request. I wanted a seat on the Homeland Security Committee. I wanted to serve on a committee that addressed so many topics near and dear to my constituents and my city. I was later honored when Chairman Michael McCall approached me to become the chairman of this subcommittee. Every day, I get to work on Homeland Security issues and advocate for resources to help our first responders and strengthen New York City's and our nation's preparedness. It's been a challenging but fulfilling responsibility. My subcommittee has made great progress in giving our first responders a voice on Capitol Hill. But the work is never done, and that's why we're here today, to meet and discuss an important topic that not only affects our constituents, but the entire nation: federal support to high-risk metropolitan areas. On September 11, 2001, the nation watched as Al-Qaeda attacked New York City and Washington, D.C. by turning planes into weapons. Fast forward to the present day, in New York City and all that it represents, remains the #1 terrorist target in the world, having experienced 5 additional attacks since that time. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the hard work of our federal, state, and New York City officials who have thwarted over a dozen other serious plots against our city. Just last year, first responders acted bravely as terrorists attacked our city with a pipe bomb and a truck. We are forever grateful to the fine men and women at the New York City Police Department, FDNY, and the Port Authority Police that ran towards these situations without giving it a second thought and saved countless lives. It is because of them and the dedicated and tireless professionals of New York City's emergency management that New York City has become a stronger, more resilient, and secure place. New York City's finest and bravest and other first responders across the nation arrive first at a disaster scene. And several federal initiatives provide instrumental support to ensure our first responders can handle whatever threat they approach. The Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, through grants, intelligent information sharing, and joint task force, have become the primary federal agencies that interact with first responders. We are thankful for both these agencies' work to help our first responders. In most cases, DHS and the FBI stand right behind our first responders during and after a terrorist incident. DHS, through the Office of Intelligence and Analysis, and the FBI have attempted to create an information sharing environment in which authorities disseminate accurate information in a timely manner and to the appropriate federal, state, and local partners. We have made great progress in breaking down the information sharing stovepipes that existed and have haunted us after September 11th, but there seems to be reoccurring challenges regarding terror-related information sharing. Information sharing is a two-way street, and I believe that the enhancements at both INA and the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force have helped tremendously in creating a better flow of terrorism information between the federal government and state and local law enforcement. I'm interested in learning from all witnesses more about what needs to be done to create a fully integrated information sharing environment. Ensuring first responders have information on the most recent terrorist attacks and other intelligence is only one part of the equation in protecting our homeland. The Homeland Security Preparedness Grants allow first responders to enhance and sustain their capabilities to protect their communities from the evolving terrorist attacks that we face. Vital grant programs include the State Homeland Security Grant Program, Urban Area Security Initiative, Port Security Grant Program, and the Transit Security Grant Program. Our committee has repeatedly heard from first responders about the importance of these programs and the capabilities they have helped their jurisdictions attain. In fact, just last week, on the 5th anniversary of the Boston Marathon bombings, we held a hearing concerning those bombings and the recent Austin serial bombings. Law enforcement representatives from Boston and Austin repeatedly emphasized how federal Homeland Security grant programs aided in their response efforts to these attacks. And I am certain we will hear similar sentiments from our witnesses on our second panel today. This committee fully supports these programs, and the committee's DHS authorization bill includes provisions from my legislation, the PREPARE Act, which authorize robust funding for these programs. I'm pleased the House overwhelmingly passed this legislation last year, and I urge the Senate to take action on it without further delay. In the nearly 17 years since September 11th of 2001, we have made great progress in hardening our defenses against terrorists who wish to do us harm. Unfortunately, they are not giving up, and neither can we. I want to thank all of our witnesses for coming to Staten Island, and I look forward to our discussion about how we can continue to secure our great nation. At this point, the chair now recognizes the ranking member of this committee, my friend, the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Payne, for any opening remarks he may have.
Good morning. I want to thank Chairman Donovan for holding today's hearing to examine federal support to high-risk urban areas. Everyone here understands that protecting the nation from bad actors is of the utmost importance. September 11th and subsequent terrorist acts and thwarted plots have taught us that there are people who constantly look for ways to exploit our vulnerabilities. Those bad actors' methods of attack have evolved over time in an attempt to stay ahead of our security enhancements. It is more important than ever before to ensure our first responders have the proper resources to plan, train, and respond to emerging threats effectively. In my district, the 10th Congressional District of New Jersey, we know very well the important role that FEMA's preparedness grants play in keeping our citizens safe and secure. My district is home to Newark Liberty International Airport, the New Jersey Transit Authority, the Port of Newark and Elizabeth Main Terminal, and a dense area of industrial facilities that have been referred to as the two most dangerous miles in America. In recent years, events such as the pipe bombs found in Elizabeth, New Jersey, which is a neighboring district, serve as a reminder that there are those with intent and means to do harm. Of course, we are also situated close to one of the most targeted cities in America, New York City. Time and time again, we have seen where investing in first responders has helped thwart or respond to these attacks. Such instances underscore the importance FEMA's funding is to state and locals. For these reasons, I've been troubled by the fact that the last two Trump administration budget proposals would make significant cuts to these critical funding streams. Fortunately, Congress has rejected these misguided cuts, and my hope is that we will continue to reject any proposals that will weaken preparedness and security for those on the ground protecting the public day in and day out. Moreover, federal first responders funding should be robust and predictable so that our state and local governments can effectively plan for the future investments. And it is important that I point out that in 2011, we saw FEMA grant funding fall significantly. It is my hope that we can see those funding levels restored, and that is what Democrats on the House Homeland Security Committee have worked to do. I intend to continue to fight for preparedness funding, as I know that it has been a lifeline to state and local governments who are already struggling to stretch their budgets. I thank the witnesses for being here today and look forward to hearing from them about the importance of federal funding to their respective organizations and how we can help support them in their vital missions. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes a gentleman from Long Island who was an original member of the Homeland Security Committee when this was formed back in 2002, served as the distinguished chairman of the entire Homeland Security Committee, my good friend from Long Island, Mr. P. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate you back holding this hearing. It is absolutely vital because there's no doubt in my mind that New York, Northern New Jersey, and Long Island are the #1 terrorist targets in the country, and the combined federal, state, and local efforts are absolutely essential. We're going to remain safe because we have an enemy that will never stop coming at us. Also, it's essential that we receive the funding that we need. It's a full-time process here in this entire region to protect ourselves. Like Mr. Payne, I have real issues with cuts proposed by the Trump administration, but before that, I have just as much concern with the cuts proposed by the Obama administration. It appears that too often that the administration, under who's in power, doesn't quite realize how significant this is. Under the Obama administration, Congress restored the cuts, and the Trump administration does as well. I'm confident we'll do it again this year. But I also want to make it clear that the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security do an outstanding job, and I look forward again to working with them as we go forward. And Dan, I just want to thank you for the work you've done with the subcommittee. This is probably no subcommittee and no part of the Homeland Security Committee is more important to the security of New York than emergency preparedness. So, and you deal on a day-to-day basis with those who are on the front lines, those who have to protect us while the rest of us are home sleeping. It's the men and women of the NYPD, FDNY, Port Authority, police, and also working with the partners of federal government, especially the FBI, Homeland Security, that keep all of us safe. So I want to thank you for holding this hearing, and I look forward to the witnesses. It's two expert panels of witnesses. I look forward to it. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. We are now pleased to have two distinguished panels with us this morning, witnesses who will testify about this important topic. Our first panel consists of Mr. William Sweeney, Jr., Assistant Director in charge of the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation's New York Field Office. Welcome, Bill. Mr. Brian Murphy is the Acting Principal Deputy Undersecretary for Intelligence and Analysis for the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Intelligence and Analysis. Brian, thank you for attending today. Mr. Thomas Donano is the Assistant Administrator for FEMA's Grant Programs Directorate. Thank you very much, Tom, for appearing today before us. And Mr. Christopher Curry is the Director of Homeland Security and Justice Issues at the Government Accountability Office. Thank you all for being here. The witnesses' full testimonies and their statements will appear in the record. The chair now recognizes Mr. Sweeney for any opening remarks he may have.
Good morning, Chairman Donovan, Ranking Member Payne, and Representative King. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the FBI's efforts to secure our communities. The FBI's mission is to protect and defend the United States against terrorist and foreign intelligence threats, uphold and enforce the criminal laws of the United States, and to provide leadership and criminal justice services to federal, state, municipal, and international agencies and partners. The area of responsibility for the FBI's New York field office covers nearly 5,000 square miles with a population of more than 13 million people. We also have an extraterritorial responsibility in the New York office where we cover issues from Canada, United Kingdom, Europe, Western Europe, and all of Africa. We have over 2,000 employees here in New York with almost an equal percentage of special agents and professional staff on board. In order to address the threats we face, we know one of the most significant factors that will drive our success is the emphasis we've placed on developing relationships and information sharing abilities. In a city and region as large as New York, we could not expect to thrive without the support of our local, state, and federal agency partners. The leadership of those agencies and men and women that make up the agencies in this region are second to none, from the NYPD, the New York State Police, the Port Authority Police Department, the FDNY, the New Jersey State Police, to name a few. Almost everything we do in the FBI is in partnership with another agency. Perhaps one of the best examples of that is the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force. The first JTTF was established here in New York City in 1980, and the second was formed shortly thereafter in Newark, New Jersey. Prior to 9/11, there were about 1,000 members of JTTFs nationwide. Today, there are over 4,000. The total number of JTTFs nationwide has also increased since 9/11 to 184. The mission of the New York JTTF is to enhance communications, coordination, and cooperation between federal, state, and local government agencies representing the law enforcement, intelligence, defense, diplomatic, public safety, and homeland security communities by providing a point of fusion for terrorism investigations and national security matters. Thanks to our extensive list of partner agencies, the relationships we share, the JTTF in New York and in New Jersey are uniquely situated to respond to critical incidents without immediate assistance from other FBI field offices. As the terrorism threat continues to evolve, it's crucial we maintain this level of capability. Should a critical incident occur within our area of responsibility, myself or one of my designees is responsible for initiating an appropriate crisis response plan. In most cases, including the recent truck attack carried out by Sepulveda Saipov along Manhattan's West Side Highway in October of 2017, executive management can be on scene within minutes. We begin communicating almost immediately with first responders. In most cases in the city, that's the NYPD and the FDNY, to determine the next steps. In addition to our 24/7 Operations Command Center, our Joint Operations Center will become operational almost immediately. Here we pull together our resources and partnership abilities made possible through the JTTF as described above, and we remain in constant communication with FBI headquarters by way of secure video teleconferencing capability. Components of the FBI Specialized Crisis Response Team will surge resources where necessary to mitigate any immediate threat to the public as we work together with our law enforcement partners to determine what information is necessary to disseminate to the community in the interest of public safety. In summary, the FBI continues to effectively engage with our local, state, federal, and international law enforcement partners and intelligence partners to confront the threats we face and protect the communities we serve. Combating terrorism in all forms remains our #1 priority. For this reason, we will continue to draw upon the relationships we've established with our partners, both here at home and abroad, to understand the threats we face, disrupt plots that harm our homeland, and dismantle the potential networks behind them. Chairman Donovan, Ranking Member Payne, Representative King, thank you again for the opportunity to discuss our efforts to secure our communities. Mr. Chairman, we're grateful for your leadership that you and the committee have provided to the FBI, and we thank you for your continuing support. I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you for your remarks, Mr. Sweeney. The chair now recognizes Mr. Murphy for any remarks he may have.
Thank you, Chairman Donovan, Ranking Member Payne, Representative King. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, along with my colleagues from the FBI, FEMA, and GAO. My testimony today, I'll describe the current threat environment and how INA shares intelligence with our state and local partners to support their important work of keeping our local communities safe. Each year, INA works with the FEMA's Grant Program Director to support the department's annual Homeland Security Grant Program, counterterrorism grant programs to provide threat analysis and to data to inform the Homeland Counterterrorism Risk Assessment. INA reviews shared intelligence reporting produced by the intelligence community, along with state and local threat reporting and other sources to provide FEMA with the relative threat ranking for the top 100 metropolitan statistical areas and states and territories in the homeland. This threat ranking allows FEMA to ensure limited funds are allocated to cities with the highest risk and informs the Secretary's decision regarding funding allocations. The State Homeland Security Program grants are important components in supporting state and local efforts to prevent terrorist attacks and other catastrophic events, and help our state and local partners prepare for and respond to significant threats to our nation. The threats we face from terrorism today are much more diverse than in the time immediately following the September 11th attacks. We face a serious, persistent, and varied terror threat, which will not diminish in the near future. While we have made it harder for terrorists to execute complex, large-scale attacks, changes in technology have made it easier for adversaries to plot attacks generally, to radicalize new followers and to commit acts of violence, and to recruit beyond our borders. The problem is further compounded by the use of simple, do-it-yourself terrorist tactics conveyed via highly sophisticated terrorist marketing campaigns to a global audience. Similarly, the threat from transnational organizations continues to grow. These organizations are highly mobile, maintain sophisticated cross-border networks, and are involved in a wide range of criminal activities, including human smuggling, and the trafficking of drugs and firearms. These criminal organizations will likely continue to employ and improve their intelligence capabilities through a variety of methods, human, technical, and cyber means. These activities all have a significant impact on the safety, security, and health of our citizens and homeland. The Department is overhauling its approach to integrating intelligence with operations, changing how we proactively address threats. Success in proactively addressing threats depends on support between the collaboration with our partners, which is the lifeblood of all DHS components. One of the department's top priorities to address this evolving threat environment is to more effectively integrate intelligence equity into our operational mission. DHS is utilizing valuable information uncovered by the intelligence community and our law enforcement professionals to adapt quickly to an ever-evolving threat at home and abroad. Driving multi-directional information exchanges with our state and local partners to fill critical information intelligence gaps is a unique part of INA mission. We are the only member of the IC explicitly charged in statute to share intelligence and threat information with state and local partners, and are responsible for developing intelligence from those partners for DHS and the IC. In support of this mission, we work closely with all of our components within DHS. INA considers intelligence professionals dedicated to providing intelligence and information sharing to our partners. These professionals in the field are one of our most valuable and unique assets. We deploy them across the country to enable regular direct engagement with our state and local partners, producing timely and actionable intelligence. Their involvement spans the spectrum of activities from the development of joint intelligence products and reporting locally generated information that we share with the IC. For example, our intelligence professionals covering the New York City area work closely with the NYPD, the New York Fire Department, and provide intelligence across and to them related to the IC. At least bi-weekly, our intelligence officers brief the NYPD on cybercrime and threats specific to New York. The collaboration I have discussed is enhanced with FEMA's Homeland Security grant programs. While only a portion of FEMA Center budgets and other state and local activities are supported through Homeland Security programs, this grant program plays a crucial role. In fact, those receiving the funds from either the state, from either the grant program or other areas, received a total of $300 million over the past 5 years. The Homeland Security grant program has been an instrumental tool in driving consistency and standardization in the way in which we share intelligence. Chairman Donovan, Ranking Member Payne, Representative King, thank you for this opportunity to speak in front of you today.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. The chair now recognizes Mr. Donano for any remarks that he may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Chairman Donovan, Ranking Member Payne, Representative King. My name is Thomas Donano. I'm the Assistant Administrator for Grant Programs at FEMA in the Department of Homeland Security. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss how the Department's preparedness grant program supports the nation's high-risk urban areas. In recent years, Americans have been called upon to respond to and recover from a number of devastating events, ranging from natural disasters to terrorist attacks. In 2007, Americans withstood several unprecedented acts of violence and terrorism. Here in New York, the October 2017 truck attack at the Hudson River Greenway left 8 dead and 11 injured. The 2017 attack at the New York Port Authority bus terminal was the first known terrorist attack on the U.S. transit system. Both events were supported by DHS-funded assets. These attacks also indicate a new and emerging threat that we must prepare for and confront. In New York, as in Las Vegas in 2017, and Paris in 2016, public gatherings and crowded places have become a target of terrorism and extreme violence. Also, as recent history has shown, cyber threats are a clear and present danger to our nation's security. This past month, a ransomware attack in Atlanta virtually paralyzed the city's municipal functions for over a week. Also in March, a similar attack temporarily shut down Baltimore's 911 system. Since 2002, DHS has provided more than $50 billion in preparedness grant funding to state and local partners. In 2017, $580 million in urban area security initiative funds funded 33 high-risk urban areas. Today, we sit between two of the nation's major UASCs, the New York City UASC and the Newark, Jersey City UASC. Both are examples of federal support provided to high-risk urban areas through DHS. Since 2002, the New York City urban area has received over $2.3 billion in UASC funds, while Newark has received over $400 million in UASC funds. High-risk urban areas also benefit from funding allocated to mass transit systems under the Transit Security Grant Program, managed at FEMA in partnership with the Transportation Security Administration. In 2017, the Transit Security Grant Program provided $88 million to 26 urban transit systems nationwide. This included over $38 million to transit systems in New York and New Jersey urban areas. Also providing essential resources to New York and New Jersey urban areas is the Port Security Grant Program. In 2017, the New York and New Jersey port area received over $20 million through the Port Security Grant Program and over $145 million in funds over the last 10 years. FEMA also manages the Nonprofit Security Grant Program. From 2007 through 2017, over $182 million were awarded to over 2,500 nonprofit organizations nationwide. Over that same period, more than $20 million was awarded to nonprofit organizations within Newark, Similarly, over $45 million was awarded to nonprofits within the New York City urban area. To ensure limited UASI funds are allocated to the cities with the highest risk, DHS conducts a yearly risk assessment of the nation's 100 most populous metropolitan statistical areas, with the support of our colleagues from INA and the FBI here with us today. Over the past year, the department, recognizing threats shift and evolve, has conducted a comprehensive review of the risk assessment process and has instituted several modifications which will take effect this coming grant cycle. Intelligence community analysis of the current threat has highlighted the interest of terrorists to strike soft targets, including public events and mass gatherings. Analysis also indicates the use of simple tactics and an increasingly dispersed threat. Based on this information, as well as lessons learned following recent attacks, the department will continue to emphasize efforts to enhance security at soft targets and mass gatherings. Our programs must evolve and be flexible as our adversaries continue to try to exploit our weaknesses. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Payne, members of the committee, thank you again for this opportunity to discuss the Homeland Security grant programs. I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bonanno. The chair now recognizes Mr. Curry for any remarks that he may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Payne, Congressman King. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today. It's great to be here in New York. Can't think of a better place to talk about this topic than right here. Since DHS was created, as was already mentioned, it's provided about $50 billion to state and local governments and tribes to strengthen preparedness. Billions more have also come from the Justice Department as well to strengthen our law enforcement functions. And to be clear, this support has made a huge impact. It's been used to purchase better radio systems, response vehicles, better surveillance, and other tools to help communities prepare for bad things to happen. It's also clear this support has been used in real-life events, some of which have been already discussed today. Also the Boston Marathon bombing and numerous active shooter events around the country. So in our view, the question isn't if this support is useful. It's more about, are we investing it year in and year out in what is needed most? Also, these programs need to evolve as the world evolves. For example, right after 9/11, we focused a lot on investing in radio systems for first responders because it was a huge capability gap. However, threats and technologies have evolved. As we build one capability, we have to assess other capabilities where we may fall short. For example, now, how do we adapt this support to better secure our IT systems or our local election systems? This brings me to the focus of our work, which really falls into two main areas. One, how do we better assess capability gaps nationwide and target our support? And two, how can DHS better manage their grants and oversee how they're used? First, assessing gaps and targeting funding accordingly has been a long-standing challenge for DHS and a concern for you all in Congress. Most recently, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, your committee, the Prepare Act and then the DHS Reauthorization Act emphasized the importance of better assessing gaps and evaluating the impact of these funds. FEMA has taken some steps to do this, such as requiring states to complete preparedness reports and communities to self-assess their risks and needs. This makes a lot of sense. I mean, communities are in the best position to assess what they need and how much of a risk they face. However, when it comes to grant allocation, we think that FEMA can do a little bit more across the country to assess that information that they get, to better understand the total capabilities that we need and where we need to focus our money rather than in developing a more quantitative standard of preparedness. Without doing this, it's really, really difficult to ensure that data from each jurisdiction are accurate and comparable across the country. It also makes it hard to understand which capabilities have been developed versus those that have been underfunded. We recommend that FEMA complete a more quantitative assessment of capability gaps and direct funding accordingly. In the past, FEMA has disagreed with this approach, but it seems that may be changing. For example, in their FY19 budget, they're proposing a new grant program that will require grantees to measure results in reducing capability gaps. This is a step in the right direction and likely reflects years of legislation on Congress's part and our past recommendations. I also want to talk about grant management. It's not an exciting topic to talk about, but managing more than 10 fragmented preparedness grant programs and IT systems that go with it, some dating back to the 90s, has been another major challenge at FEMA. These grants go to the same jurisdictions for many of the same purposes at the same time. We've reported that the lack of a consolidated system to manage them makes them susceptible to overlap and potential duplication too. It also makes it difficult to even track what investments we are making across all these programs over time. To its credit, FEMA has taken some action to better manage the grants, but the solution really hinges on a multi-million-dollar IT system that's under development. So implementing this will be a huge challenge at the agency, and we have ongoing work assessing that as well. This concludes my statement. I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Curry, and the Chair thanks all of our witnesses for their remarks. I'll now recognize myself 5 minutes for questions. I'd like to ask Director Sweeney, Ms. Murphy, if you could just talk about, we talked about the new threats. Since September 11th, we've gotten very good. You have gotten very good. The first responders have gotten very good at protecting our hard targets. I tell people, if you want to visit the Empire State Building, please go. If you want to come to the Capitol, please bring your family down to Washington to visit the Capitol. It's very safe. The evolving threats have come over recent times, soft targets, different methods. We spoke about computer attacks, cyber attacks. When we see these new evolving threats, and many times our federal agencies will see them maybe before the locals. Besides the task force, how do we drill down and get that information to those folks that are going to have to respond, or in fact may be able to prevent some of these attacks from occurring? And when we're looking at these new emerging attacks, your availability of having people overseas, I know our local responders have people assigned overseas as well, but a lot of these things occur and could come on your radar screen before others' radar screens. Those new emerging efforts by our enemies, how are we getting that down to our folks on the ground?
So your premise is correct. The tactics have certainly shifted over time. I think you could easily argue that the soft target is the #1 threat now. The tactics are more simplified. So an individual looking to be part of a terrorist group or terrorist ideology basically has everything at their fingertips now. A ton of messaging through social media, techniques that are available online that you can control and resource yourself, and the simplicity of the technique and the cheapness of some of the means to do it. We do have an advantage, as you discussed, of having folks stationed overseas through the legal offices, and the NYPD has folks overseas. With our extraterritorial jurisdiction, this region gets to see a lot of things first. Those things, those pieces of intel and pieces of information are put into intelligence bulletins. So where that really has an impact is on those agencies that are not part of the JTTF and that don't have the resources to staff somebody into a federal task force. Through the fusion centers around the country, in this state, in New York State, the CT regions, I think there's 14 regions, those bulletins are pushed through the fusion center and into those regions run by the state police. Each of those regions has a chief that chairs it, and you'll see those bulletins get pushed out to all those local agencies, sometimes on a weekly basis. Enhancements like that and info sharing that occurs like that, I think gives everybody an advantage to see some of those threats that they might not get to experience if they're not sitting on the JTTF and seeing the information first thing at the time.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes, sir. So in complement to that, the department owns the Homeland Security Intelligence Network, or HISN, which has undergone a lot of technical upgrades in the last couple of months and years. We are now driving all federal intelligence reporting to that in partnership with the FBI, ATF, as well as our own components, so that we have a one-stop shop there where our state colleagues can find relevant intelligence there. Its functionality and the search component has vastly increased. For one, now its capability to sort out intelligence products to better inform all of us, both at the federal level as well as the state and local levels. So in terms of pushing the information, I'll continue to try to make strides in partnership with our colleagues in the state and local world. And then if I can shift gears to the suspicious activity reporting program, which has over the years, over the last recent years, trailed off a little bit. We are refreshing that program now. We are becoming a whole lot smarter and agile to address the wide array of threats that are out there in cyber, transnational organized crime, as well as terrorism. With that, sir, I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. In the short period of time I have, Mr. Bonanno, Mr. Curry, both of you are so intricately involved with our grant programs that allow our locals to use federal funding to protect the citizens of their municipalities. Are those grants flexible enough to address what Mr. Sweeney and Mr. Murphy spoke about? When they see something that's emerging, they push that information down to the police department, fire department, OEM, but their grant parameters may not allow them to use funds for that new emerging threat or that new piece of information. Are the grants flexible enough that they can divert funds to where they need them?
Thank you for that question. I'll take the first bite at it. Given the nature of the grant programs, they are an annual allocation, so in and of themselves, because it's once a year, they may not be flexible in that sense. However, once the dollars reach the stakeholder, I know that I personally have signed many requests from state and local jurisdictions to be able to move funds around, and every single person that works for me knows that they work for all folks here in New York and out here in the audience in the country to try to do exactly that. That being said, it is again an annual process that we have to continue to try to make it better and faster. But I've not turned down a request, nor would I see one to support any operational requirement.
Mr. Curry?
Yeah, I think this has been an issue for 15 years. I know in the early days when we were buying lots and lots of equipment, the states and locals just didn't have the capability. Over time, equipment that needs to be maintained, and you need to have someone to operate it. And that was a flexibility that was built in the later years, is that some of the funds could be used to actually maintain and operate that equipment because it becomes a huge cost. So, but I think Congress plays a huge role in that too, in making it clear what these grant funds can be used for year in and year out. And I don't think it's easy for them to be as flexible sometimes as they need to be without specific direction sometimes from Congress, which you all have provided in legislation recently for certain things, like cybersecurity, for example. That's been in local election systems. It's been a real gray area about what specific things can be actually purchased and used in those areas, because they're emerging and evolving every day. So I think there could probably be some more flexibility built into them as well.
Thank you for that information. My time has expired. The chair now recognizes the ranking member, Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Piano, FY 2018 and 2019 budget proposal, the President proposed massive cuts to FEMA's preparedness grants by more than $900 million. Did FEMA engage stakeholders about the impacts of such cuts, and what would they have the planning, training, and execution of their missions be?
Thank you, Ranking Member, for that question. I'm unsure of the exact number that you're referring to. The FY19 President's request is approximately $2.3 billion. That includes, as one of my colleagues on the panel referred to earlier, $522 million program, a new grant program that would, competitive grant program that would allow us the flexibility to try to meet the emerging threats that our colleagues in the intelligence community here have pointed out, and also identify those national priorities that we may have seen emerge, for example, after this past storm season and terrorist season, that we would be able to focus on priority areas such as gaps in communication, emergency management, information sharing, and that would be in a competitive grant program. So we think the President's request does adequately reflect the need, and yes, sir, we do talk all the time with our stakeholders.
And they've elaborated on what the effects would be in terms of their ability to be prepared?
Well, sir, it is a constrained budget environment. I think we all know that. Again, I would reiterate to you, I think that the President's request does provide the flexibility and the ability to target priority areas that we would work with our local organizations, emergency management, police, fire, cyber. We would be able to address those emerging gaps and put the resources into the hands of the operators as soon as possible.
I get very concerned from time to time in reference to the cuts that are made to the grants and the funding for Homeland Preparedness. When we always see the military budget escalating, I believe that the Homeland budget is as important as the military budget because it defends us here on the homeland. And so I tend to try to couple the two with respect to having administrations and people understand that it's just as important as the military budget to defend us here on the homeland. So, I would just really try to keep that in perspective. I think the two are linked. I think the two are important, and we should address the homeland budget in the same manner as the administration of the defense budget. The President's proposed budget recommended a 25% cost match for urban area security initiatives, state homeland security grant programs, and transit security grant programs, which were already slated for significant cuts. Did the administration consider whether the state and local governments could absorb this cost match?
Thank you for that question, sir. Yes, I would point out, as I answered the question, that cost matches have been successfully implemented in other grant programs. I would point out the Emergency Management Performance Grant, the EPG program, which is a one-to-one hard match, dollar for dollar. I think that's been very successfully implemented, and I think the success of the cost match comes from that emergency management community really feeling ownership of the program. We administer it, we run it, if you would. However, the EPG program is very much a shared responsibility, and the changes that we make to that program has to be done in close consultation with those emergency managers. And part of that, I believe, comes from the cost match that's included. We also have implemented cost matches in the fire grant program. Those are also what we consider the hard match, dollar to dollar, as well as the port security grant program. Again, I think it gives the stakeholders a real sense of ownership on the program, and very much a robust dialogue with the folks that work for us, the grant managers, on what's being bought, how it meets the requirements. So it's been successfully implemented in the past. Any discussions that we have had about the Homeland Security Program match has been in a soft match, not a dollar to dollar.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Mr. Chairman, I'll get interesting time.
The gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes Mr. Kennedy. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sweeney, it's been no secret that years ago there was a breakdown in cooperation and coordination between the FBI and the NYPD in certain areas, certain difference in personalities. Since you've come and talked before that, it seems the situation has improved. Can you tell us what that level of cooperation is now?
The level of cooperation, in my opinion, is awesome. It's seamless. There is zero daylight between the agencies. I think obviously a lot of that has to do with leadership. But it's also the men and women that have come up through the organizations over time are now in different levels. So we all started at a much junior level. I had the pleasure of being on, or the privilege of being on the Jersey Task Force first, and now this one. It is seamless. The NYPD in particular has a command structure that comes with it embedded on the JTTF. So in addition to our SAC or our special agent in charge, there is a chief, NYPD chief, 4 lieutenants, 9 sergeants, 100-something detectives that are embedded in every squad. My personal belief is you should not be able to differentiate between the agent, the detective, the trooper, the analyst, the linguist. And when you walk into one of our squad areas, I don't think you notice the difference. I feel sometimes that usually the NYPD detective has the tie on. And that, in my opinion, is pretty seamless.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much. It's encouraging to hear. Mr. Tanaka, first, again, I want to thank you for the work you've done. I'm fully aware of that. I appreciate it. As far as overall, I look at the UASI budget for the last 3 budgets. The Obama budget and the 2 Trump budgets, and both of them, they're significantly less requested than is needed. Like, for instance, this year, we'll go back to the last Obama budget. There was $330 million requested in UASI funding. Congress ended up authorizing and appropriating $605 million. Under the first Trump budget, he requested $450 million. Congress ended up appropriating $630 million. And this year, it's 448 requested. Now, obviously, there's a breakdown between both administrations and the Congress as to what's needed. And I know you said that even as far as more local contributions, it gives the local more of a sense of ownership. Well, you take the NYPD, they have well over 1,000 officers already. They certainly have an ownership as to what's going on, and whatever they get from the federal government is not going to match their expenditures. And it seems to me when threats, in many ways, the threats are greater than before 9/11. At least in 9/11, they were coming out of cage in Afghanistan. Now we have a multiplicity of terror groups. They can be doing it in their basement. They can be doing it, ISIS, you have Al-Qaeda, you have Al-Shabaab, you have Boko Haram, you have Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. So in many ways the threats are maybe not as great as 9/11, but they're more than 9/11. And yet, to me, to be even talking about these type cuts, when the threats are increasing, and certainly the commitment in New York City, Nassau, Suffolk, Westchester, Rockland, which comprise this zone, this area, I just don't see why one administration after the other continues to propose these cuts. And to me, it can actually undermine any effort that we need. And I'm saying this in a bipartisan way. I agree with Don Payne as far as the Trump budgets, but I equally agreed with the Obama budgets. They seem to be always shortchanging us when the greatest local effort is being made right here, where the greatest threats are.
Thank you, Congressman King, for that question. Again, I would point out $2.3 billion in the President's budget is, I think, a substantial commitment and very close to the enacted budget, FY18 enacted. But I'd also like to point out specifically to New York and New Jersey. And New York has consistently been #1 highest risk rank in the country. New Jersey and New York, I think, ranked as high as 6th this past year. I recall their draft risk assessment that's recently been sent out is actually perhaps moved up to 5th. I'm not sure exactly. And any risk analysis that we do is ultimately the Secretary does have the discretion when it comes to resource allocations. And again, this year we'll defer to her when we make recommendations around risk. So again, specific to the budget, we think the President's request is robust this year at $2.3 billion, that we can continue to buy down risks nationally and to build capabilities both locally here in New York and New Jersey as well as throughout the rest of the nation.
I would just say, not that Mr. Payne is in defending, but if God forbid an attack does come, Northern New Jersey and New York City are going to be working together. This is going to be one battle zone, one evacuation zone, and one response zone. Feel that.
Many of you came some great distances to be here, so if we could have a lightning round where we each ask just one more question. I'd like to again ask Mr. Sweeney and Mr. Murphy, with these new emerging threats, drones, cybersecurity, do you see any obstacles in either your capability as federal law enforcement officers having capabilities that maybe NYPD and FD and OEM don't have? Are there things that prevent them from doing what they would be able to do better because of the position they're in? Is there clearances, problems in disseminating information that a lot of the information we get is classified, it's secret, it's top secret, some of the stuff is overclassified? What obstacles do you see in your dealing with our local first responders that you think maybe Congress can clear up? And I'm going to ask the same of both of you as far as grants and funding of their efforts. What obstacles do you see? Mr. Perry pointed out some of them already. What do you think we can do to help make this situation better?
So, sir, on the issue of clearances, so everybody that's on the GTF has a clearance for top secret, and in most cases a sensitive compartment side of that house as well. On the issue of passing information to state and local agencies that are not on those JTTLs or not part of the task force with this clearance, I don't know if it's something Congress can do. Certainly, the agencies could ensure that they write those products, those intelligence products, in such a manner that there is no issue with classification. You can push it as easily as possible. And a lot of that's done through annual writing courses we now put people through, including fusion centers. So there are things that can be done to even speed up that information sharing. On the threat side, I'm not sure I can get into technical capability on some things, especially drones, but certainly the drones, the issue of drones is something we all need to look at, and how we address those, especially if you are at a large scale. What authorities do you have or not have, and what capability you have to disrupt that? But I don't think I want to get into techniques or tactics.
Certainly understand that. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir. So I'll start with drones. IA, in partnership with state and locals, have written a number of products on some of the challenges faced by drones. I'll send those for the record.
Thank you. Without objection.
So with these products, and you'll notice the product line, a couple of what we call bars or field reports that our officers in the field help generate with our state and local partners and add value to the rest of us back in DC and the other federal partners throughout the country. So with drones, though, back to that, there are a lot of challenges there with how we look at those and put those in place. DHS is a leader in the intelligence world, working with all of you to look at this from a technical standpoint as well. We certainly don't want to interfere with commerce, but at the same time, there's a lot that can be done with respect to regulation and working through the threats they face. And I'll just touch on a couple to illustrate the point. The number of reports coming back substantially increases, whether it's from our state and local or federal colleagues. We actually track that back in DHS. Their interference with aviation, commercial aviation, military sites, etc. It's laid out in some of these pieces, and it's on the rise to continue to go in that direction. So last thing I'll address, sir, is just with respect to information sharing. We, along with our other federal colleagues, continue to strive in that direction. Thank you for lifting the cap on our field personnel that are employed. We've seen nothing replaces face-to-face engagement. So we have 3 people locally here, and we plan on exploring ways to increase that enhancement so we can bring the full range of DHS equities and intelligence that we, the department, sit on to aid in all these diverse threats that are in our state and locals and these diverse threats that we all face.
Thank you. On the grant side, anything that Congress can be doing to make your job easier and help those folks be more effective?
I think you raised an important point. I talked to my statement about just letting the grants be able to evolve with the threat. I think it's just a huge challenge because the threat changes so much. It's one of the reasons we focus so much on trying to quantitatively assess capabilities, like what a jurisdiction has built versus what it hasn't built. And I think we also mentioned the federal government having the information that sometimes the states and locals don't. I think injecting that into the grant justifications and the whole local risk assessment process to make sure they understand, what their biggest risks are so that they can, allocate their grant funding to those places is the most important thing here.
Mr. Chairman, thanks for that question. I'd like to address the drone issue first. I've had several mayors and governors raise this issue with both myself as well as our secretary. There are, as I understand, some policy impediments that perhaps we could work on together to ensure that the people that our dollars hire and the equipment that our dollars buy, that the policy and the authorities are in place for them to use that effectively against an adversary. Our adversaries are not waiting. We're seeing that in the reporting, and this is, I think, precisely the type of flexibility we need in the program. Second, to your point on cyber, that there is an emerging consensus, again, I think among mayors and governors, that is an emerging threat. And the events that pointed out, no mistaken, in Atlanta and Baltimore highlight that. And we're going to try to address that in grant programs. And it's all about capacity building, sharing information. I think this is where the federal government can and should lead. And I think our programs should be able to support that effort. Thank you.
Thank you all. Mr. Payne?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sweeney and Mr. Murphy, quickly, if you can describe to the committee whether or not you think that the preparedness grant funding is keeping up pace with the threats posed by bad actors very quickly.
So, sir, I actually am not up to speed on how the grant funding dollars work, so I'm actually probably not the best answer for that.
Sir, as you probably know, we work with FEMA to assess the intelligence of the risk to the cities. It makes about 25% of the FEMA calculation. I think it has been talked about here that flexibility in terms of how that money is used at the local level is very important. And certainly in certain locations, terrorism may not be the primary threat they face. And having that specificity to be where they need to be with those dollars is important. We'll continue to work on that risk. I'll leave this on top. Thank you.
Yeah, and in terms of the flexibility, we know with the evolving threat it needs to be nimble, but sometimes what we find as members of the legislature and the House of Representatives is that if there is not specificity in the language in the grant, then the money kind of, goes wherever the moon at the point in time is sitting in that seat decides. So that's the one issue with the matter of specificity. Although we understand with an evolving threat, we need to be nimble. So we've got to try to figure out a balance on how to make sure we really can do both, and whichever is most important at the time. And Mr. Curry, sometimes it's difficult to connect the dots on why something like preparedness grant management would be important to a program. Would you talk about the impact that unaddressed management challenges would have over a lifetime of a grants program as big as the preparedness grant, and describe your findings if unaddressed could have long-term impact?
Sure. Well, there's two areas that we focused on. I talked about one, assessing capabilities so we know where the grants are going and what they need to be used for, and the two is just internally how you're managing all those different grants. On the first, on assessing capabilities, and not to sound academic about this, but I think one of the reasons it's a quantitative assessment of what capabilities you're buying down year in and year out is so important for trying to make these decisions that you just talked about and helping Congress make these decisions. When FEMA and the administration go forward with their proposals, it's like, well, what capabilities have we bought down? What risk have we bought down? Why do we need this funding? What are we going to focus on next? I think it's critical. Without that, like you said, the money's going out, you're hoping The second piece is just internal management. I talked about a lot of these programs date back to when they, before DHS existed. Old IT systems, inability to look across the grant programs at any given time and spit out how much money is going out to what jurisdiction, what is it being used for. That's been pretty much impossible up to this point. So without doing that, how can you look across all the grant programs and figure out what you're buying?
Thank you, Ms. very much. And Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields, the chair recognizes Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd say there's only one question for the panel, and it's more of a statement than a question, because I wouldn't want you to give any specifics on the record. But I'm very concerned about the whole issue of mass transit security, specifically rail. Just take New York City, there was millions of passengers every day, thousands of entrances and exits. Long Island Railroad, Metro North, Amtrak, Penn Station, Grand Central. How much concern is there within the Homeland Security community, the federal law enforcement community, as to what we can do to provide more protections for mass transit? Again, I'm not looking for any specifics here, but is that an area of concern which you feel is being addressed?
Absolutely, I feel mass transit's an area of concern. People are obviously addressing it. My personal opinion is there's plenty to do, but definitely an area of concern, especially in this jurisdiction.
Especially compared, let's say, to an airport, where in many ways it's so easy to secure airplanes. Everyone has to go through certain entrances, lead through certain exits. You have the magnetometers, you have TSA, you have everything. There's really none of that. It's practically not when it comes to mass transit. I'm sorry, sir.
Yes, sir. I mean, we would place it as a very high concern. What I can say in this context, in this environment, is the potential to weaponize such things as fentanyl has been well discussed. But that's just an example of how in a closed space environment you can cause a lot of damage. So from our perspective, it remains a high level of concern. It's one illustration where in a confined space, you could, with an adversary could produce a lot of casualties.
Congressman King, yes, it absolutely is a concern of mine. I actually have written Amtrak up here. Every time I go into a transportation system, I'm always doing my own personal red team of what you see and what you don't, a lot you don't see. But in this threat environment, what you do see matters as well. I would point out that, particularly in the New York urban area, the way this jurisdiction manages their Homeland Security and urban area grants, like no others, how they use, they don't look at the transit problem through the Transit Security Grant Program. They leverage all of their grant programs. And the other point I would make to that is with Mr. Curry, a couple of terms that he used, and that's about focus. If we don't focus and prioritize the limited dollars that we do have, and we do need to work with, I think we absolutely have to do that so that we can drive down on these priorities that, again, seem to be emerging as consensus from the intelligence community. Thank you.
I agree with you. At GAO, we've been raising this concern since you were chairman of this committee. It's a huge concern. In many ways, in mass transit, passenger rail, the same issue you have at a concert. You know, huge numbers of people just in open spaces. So it's a huge issue to address. And frankly, over the years, we've been a bit perplexed about, I mean, TSA handles a lot of this on the transportation security side. A little perplexed at the percentage of funding, you know, dedicated and programs dedicated to surface transportation versus aviation. It's dwarfed. The grants are a very important part, and they're used by those operators too. But it's a huge issue.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'd like to thank all witnesses for your testimony, thank my colleagues for their questions. Some of our colleagues who couldn't have come today, or some of us who may have some other questions, they request that you submit answers to those in writing. We're going to take about a 5-minute break to change over our panel and bring our second panel on. So we'll take a 5-minute recess.
Take care, sir.
I'm gonna like read the first page and a half. Back out like 3 key points that the rest of it tell me. There's more submitted for the record. How's it going? How are you? How else could I be here? Here on a beautiful day in the island of This is a little obvious. We done. Yeah. I grew up all over there. It's across the hall. You want to get a quick ride?
Yeah, hit it. I'll watch now. Yeah.
Okay.
I left my water bottle.
Press list. Can I have the press release? Thank you. No, the press release, the whole.
Oh, the press release?
Yeah. That's
We have a copy of
Yeah.
Donovan's opening statement, but everything
and,
else is posted online, so you can go to our website at homeland.house.gov.
Oh, because
can
we
find
need all
some-
the list.
Yeah, you can get that on homeland.house.gov, and you can get all the witnesses' names.
Can I have a pen? I'm not gonna remember because. I have to send the captain. shot?
I mean, it must be good. Like, the audio must be.
I don't have any cell reception, so I can't check.
I don't know. Cell reception.
And the Wi-Fi didn't work.
Yeah. I keep having to go outside every time I want to check my phone.
We're pleased to welcome our second panel of witnesses. Our second panel includes the NYPD Deputy Commissioner of Counterterrorism and Intelligence, John Miller. Thank you for coming today, John. Chief of FDNY Counterterrorism and Emergency Preparedness, Joe Pfeiffer. Thank you, Joe, for coming. Commissioner of New York City Emergency Management, Joe Esposito. Joe, welcome. Chief of Security for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, John Village. Chief, thank you for coming. And the Director of New Jersey's Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness, Jared Maples. Jared, welcome. I want to thank you all for being here today. The witnesses' full written testaments, the statements will be appearing in the record, and I now recognize Commissioner Miller for his opening remarks.
Thanks, Representative Donovan, and to the committee. I'm John Miller, Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence and Counterterrorism for the New York City Police Department. On behalf of Police Commissioner James P. O'Neill, I'm pleased to testify before your subcommittee today to discuss federal funding that has supported the NYPD's efforts to secure New York City. More than any other place in the world, New York City remains in the crosshairs of violent terror. It's not speculation, it's empirical data, the consensus of the global intelligence community as well. Since September 11th, there have been approximately 24 terrorist plots against New York City, with targets such as Times Square, the Brooklyn Bridge, John F. Kennedy Airport, the New York Stock Exchange, the subway systems, as well as major synagogues and other sites. In most cases, these plots have been thwarted by the efforts of the NYPD and the FBI-NYPD Joint Terrorism Task Force. Tragically, in the last 2 years, 4 attacks have succeeded in striking our city. An explosion in the Chelsea section of Manhattan in which dozens were injured. A white supremacist who murdered an African-American man with a sword, allegedly as a practice run to alert the plot. A terrorist who drove a pickup truck down the West Side Highway running path, which sadly killed 8 individuals and injured others. And an ISIS-inspired suicide bomber who set off a homemade explosive device at the Port Authority bus terminal in the subway station below there, injured 3 individuals as well as himself. We have worked long and diligently to build a deterrent that has kept this city safe while protecting and upholding the constitutional rights and liberties afforded those who live, work, and visit New York City. But the specter of another terrorist attack is always present. September 11th has changed how the NYPD views its mission and the world around us forever. That work, however, cannot happen without the assistance and aid of the federal government. Following the tragedy, the NYPD recognized we could not defer the sole responsibility of protecting this city from terrorist attack to the federal government, and we have continued to prioritize this ever-evolving effort. Soon after 9/11, the NYPD became the first police department in the country to develop its own robust, sophisticated counterterrorism capability. We have expanded efforts to include international events, gathering intelligence far beyond our borders, with police officers staged in 14 posts around the world. Federal funding is critical to our efforts. Over the last 5 years, the NYPD has received an average of $150 $56 million a year in federal funding. Notably, on average, $113 million of that funding each year comes from the Department of Homeland Security. That in the form of DHS grants. Much credit and much thanks goes to you, Chairman Donovan, Representative King, Representative Payne, and the members of this committee. The entire New York congressional delegation, in fact, has helped us over the years to secure these funds. The NYPD relies on this funding to protect New Yorkers against terrorist attacks and strengthen homeland preparedness, including the security of critical transportation and port infrastructure. Over the years, the caliber of people that we have been able to attract into the NYPD has played a major role in our ability to protect this city. We've hired civilian analysts who are experts in intelligence and foreign affairs. They study terrorist groups, terrorist trends, methods of attacks. One of our most important institutional strengths is the remarkable diversity of the ranks of the NYPD. The NYPD is fortunate to have a deep pool of foreign-speaking officers. This has allowed us to build a foreign language program with more than 1,200 registered speakers of 85 different languages: Arabic, Dari, Farsi, Mandarin, Pashto, Russian, Spanish, Urdu, just to name a few. Our personnel also includes trained vaporwave dogs. My whole talent comes on 2 legs. Our vaporwave dogs are deployed for large-scale events in the city. They are adept at sensing mobile threats and explosive particles. They are trained to avoid the distractions of large crowds and loud noises. They're an invaluable component in our policing strategy. But at $40,000 to $60,000 per animal, they're an expensive commodity. But imagine their ability to screen large crowds during an event like the Christmas tree lighting, New Year's Eve, Thanksgiving Day parade, the New York City Marathon. They become an integral and invaluable part of our ability to prevent terrorist attacks. The NYPD provides comprehensive training to our officers responding to explosive, chemical, biological, and radiological incidents. There are a multitude of possible forms of terrorist attacks, possible forms that a terrorist attack could take. The department has to be ready for any scenario at any time. Federal funds have been vital in training officers to respond to active shooter scenarios, allowing them to engage and end a coordinated terrorist attack such as the Mumbai attack or the attack on the Bataclan Theater in Paris. It also provides critical instruction for officers for life-saving techniques that can be implemented before it is safe enough for medical personnel to enter an active crime scene. And in a few minutes, you'll hear from Chief Pfeiffer about a lot of the direction we've been going in that vein so that we don't just stop the killing, but also stop the dying. This all comes together in a carefully woven set of programs. 3,000 radiation detectors that our officers are armed with in the streets looking for a radiological threat before it presents itself. 10,000 cameras integrated into our informational systems that can be pushed to NYPD smartphones like this, where officers can access all forms of department data holdings, and soon we will have, beyond the pilot program, the ability to push video to those phones so that at a crime scene, an officer will literally have the ability to take his finger, rewind that camera backwards, and see what actually occurred at the time the event was there. If it's in an area covered by the camera, and as the network expands, we hope that's more of it. These are growing programs. You take the active shooter piece, that's 11,606 officers who've been currently trained in active shooter tactics. That's regular patrol officers, in addition to the nearly 1,800 specialized officers we now have from the Strategic Response Group, the Critical Response Command, and the Emergency Service Unit with specialized long weapons and heavy vests and helmets for their protection. I dare say that no other municipality in the world, no municipal police department, has the ability to deploy that many specialized people with specialized training and equipment in that field anywhere else in the world. In the intelligence Intelligence Bureau, our mantra is intelligence, interdiction, to stop the thing before it happens, and prevention. In the Counterterrorism Bureau, they pick up where Intel left off, with prevention, but preparedness and the ability to respond with the maximum of effectiveness if the event does occur. We treat every day as if that is the day when the attack that we are not expecting is going to happen. And that is a posture that in a police department where 85% of our expenses are personnel related, the additional funds provided by the Department of Homeland Security and supported by the members of this committee are essential.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Chief?
Good morning, Chairman Donovan, Ranking Member Payne, and Congressman Payne. Thank you for having me here today. I am the Chief of Counterterrorism and Emergency Preparedness for the New York City Fire Department. Homeland Security is in an urban setting is immensely challenging for our first responders. Our population of over 8.5 million people, New York City has the highest dense population of any city in the country. Expand that out to our region, our New Jersey and the tri-state area, we have a tremendous amount of responsibility for a megacity of 20 million people. This includes the UN, Trump Tower, and just recently there was a fire, a serious fire in Trump Tower. But this landscape in the tri-state area of an evolving threat, involving security, and involving disaster management is what we're about. The post-9/11 environment has greatly expanded the role of the city's fire, police, emergency management agencies to save people, to make it safe for the people that come to our area every day. The mission of the New York City Fire Department is not only about responding to fires, but it's also responding to medical emergencies, public safety incidents, natural disasters, and acts of terrorism. In the last 6 months alone, we responded to 2 separate terrorist attacks. The first in Lower Manhattan, where a terrorist drove a pickup truck down a bike lane and killed 8 people, injuring 11. And the second took place in the subway near Port Authority, near the bus terminal, where terrorists set off a pipe bomb strapped to the body during rush hour. Working with our federal, state, and local partners, we need to meet this challenge through a matrix of specialized training, planning, equipping, preparing, information, and intelligence sharing, all of which are made possible through federal Homeland Security funding. I'd like to highlight some of these programs. Following the recommendation of the 9/11 Commission, the Fire Department leveraged Homeland Security grant funds to create a state-of-the-art Emergency Operations Center. Today, the Emergency Operations Center at FDNY serves as part of a network of managing complex emergencies and to share information by connecting the local partners like NYPD and OEM, as well as the National Operations Center down in D.C. Let me give you an example. When U.S. Airways Flight 1549 had an emergency landing in the icy waters of the Hudson River, not only did we have to coordinate rescue operations from the Operations Center, but we had to share critical information. By comparing the manifest from the plane, from the LaGuardia of the plane, who was on the plane, and comparing that to the people that had to go through our medical and our hospitals, we learned first that all 155 passengers and crew were alive and rescued. That information was placed on the Homeland Security Information Network and immediately provided this fact to all government, including the President of the United States. See, information is power if we share it and if we share it in real time. In the aftermath of the World Trade Center attacks, we developed an incident management team to manage and coordinate complex emergencies. funding paid for the extensive training of the INTs, as well as full-scale exercises, which the team participated in with partners within New York City and outside of the city. Matter of fact, just last week, the INT ran a full-scale exercise in upstate New York in a training facility, partnering with NYPD, the New York State INT, to practice simultaneous large-scale events involving building collapse and active shooters. We also created a Center for Terrorism and Disaster Preparedness to develop strategies, emergency response plans, intel products, educational programs, and scenario-based exercises to improve the department's response to terrorist acts, to natural disasters, and to large-scale incidents. The work of CTDP has been on the front lines preparing the department, the city, and the nation for new and emerging threats. Working with NYPD and NISA, we developed multi-agency plans outlining the roles and responsibilities to respond to major incidents. The Center for Terrorism and Disaster Preparedness has been working with multiple agencies to address the growing threat of vertical terrorism. This is an event where terrorist attacks high-rise buildings using semi-automatic weapons, explosives, and the use of fire and smoke-based weapons. CTDP conducted a recent study on this topic, which I provided the committee. To prepare for such an attack, FDNY last year we hosted a vertical terrorism preparedness workshop, which we held on the 63rd floor of the new One World Trade Center, with NYPD, with NISA, with the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, with the FBI and the DHS, FEMA, building managers, and trauma center doctors. As the environment, the threat environment changes, we must have first responders also change. This type of research that we're doing at FDNY in our center is preparing our first responders and agencies across not only the city, but across the country. We learn together and we share this information about vertical terrorism. We also use Homeland Security grant funding to make smart investments in the core competencies such as building collapse, CBRN, mass casualty incidents. These funds allow us to develop and enhance capabilities in search and rescue, hazardous material mitigation, rescue medic pre-hospital skills, marine operations, and swift water rescues. A key innovation in the department's response to mass casualty incidents was the formation of a rescue task force, which is made up of first responders who receive specialized training for triage, treatment, and transport of victims during an active shooter incident. They are part of a response matrix that are proactive in deploying in a high-profile special events like Times Square, New Year's Eve, and the Thanksgiving Day Parade. The Rescue Task Force is dependent upon our partners in NYPD for force protection, so FDNY and medical responders can go into these dangerous areas, to go into a warm zone, to provide triage and to stop the bleeding. What John mentioned before is what we do. Law enforcement goes in to stop the killing, and FDNY goes in to stop the dying. And to do that, each member has ballistic protection and has completed on-hands training in tourniquets and clotting agents. But what is so important for us is this joint exercises that we do between FDNY and NYPD and working with OEM. These things are important. If we don't practice it, it doesn't become real. And only by working together as a team will we be ready for the next extreme event. These resources were developed with Homeland Security funding, works in concert with one another to provide a fast and thorough response to mitigate these threats and incidents. I'll give you an example. During the the pipe bombing at the Port Authority. What we had to respond to that incident was our rescue task force. We had our medical resources. We brought in our rebreather units that if things got bad, we would operate the self-contained breathing apparatus for a long period of time. Our rescue and squad companies drew from special training. We had a compressor unit if there was collapse and mass casualty pilots we brought into the scene. Our hazardous material units were dispatched so we could take radiological readings. Even our marine companies that were on the waterways stepped up patrol. The resources that we have developed and maintained using Homeland Security funding is critical in saving not only the people of New York, but the population in the entire region. One of our marine units our marine units is a regional asset. We respond to incidents on the waterway, both on the New York and the New Jersey side. We even have a pressurized cabin in case there was an attack with chlorine on the city or the area. We can disperse that cloud through using water because this pressurized cabin can go into an area of contamination. But working with our port security partners, we are preparing for the next type of active shooter attack. One which could occur in the many ferries that bring thousands of people to work each day. Our workshop focuses on not only stopping the killing by law enforcement and stopping the dying by our medical personnel, but also about stopping the drowning. Because we know if there's an active shooter on a boat, on one of our ferries, that people will jump in the water to escape the shooter. Such a comprehensive approach of preparedness cannot be done without this grant funding. Members of our rescue operation are trained to these high levels. We work with our urban search and rescue teams, our IMTs, not only to protect the city of New York and the region, but also to be an asset for the rest of the country. During Hurricane Sandy, we sent our team down to New Orleans. I'm sorry, during Hurricane Katrina, we sent our team down to New Orleans. During Hurricane Irene, we sent our teams up to Broome County, upstate New York. And just recently, we sent our teams of urban search and rescue and our incident management teams to Texas for Hurricane Harvey, Florida for Hurricane Irma, and Puerto Rico for Hurricane Marie. See, preparedness is a race against time, to be ready for the next attack or the next extreme event. The events of 9/11 took place in 102 minutes, which is less time than this hearing today. Every federal dollar that flows to the FDNY improves our response so we can serve the greatest number of people and pay dividends across the United States. We are looking forward to continuing to partner with this committee and with Congress and to adapt to the new threat environment so we can protect the urban area in New York City and the tri-state area. So thank you so much for allowing me to share the experiences of FDNY and for your support in high-risk urban areas.
Thank you, Chief, and for a community so dependent on ferry service, your testimony was compelling. John, not that yours wasn't compelling either. The chair now recognizes my good friend, Commissioner of OEM, Joe Esposito.
I'm not going to be compelling. Good morning, Chairman Donovan, Ranking Member Payne, Congressman King, members of the Emergency Preparedness Response Communications Subcommittee. I'm Joe Esposito, Commissioner of New York City Department of Emergency Management. It's my honor to be here to talk about the importance of Homeland Security grant funding for our city. To begin, allow me to give you a sense of the scale of our work, the mission of emergency management in New York City. Our agency we had a busy year 2017. We activated the city's Emergency Operations Center 14 times for a total of 107 days. That includes 5 winter weather events, 2 building vacates due to major fires, 2 flash floods, an active shooter at Bronx Lebanon Hospital, a heat emergency, the attack on the Port Authority, and hurricanes Jose and Maria. We were activated for 73 days for Hurricane Maria, and during that time, we helped coordinate the operation of a hurricane reception center at the Julia D. Burgos Latino Cultural Center in Spanish Harlem that assisted over 2,000 households. We deployed almost 300 city staff to Puerto Rico and U.S. Virgin Islands to assist in recovery operations. In addition, the New York City Urban Search and Rescue team, which is managed by my shop, we deployed 190 members to Texas and Puerto Rico over the course of 3 hurricanes to assist in water rescue, evacuations, and wellness checks. The team brought in food, water, and medical supplies, as well as repairing generators for hospitals in isolated areas in Puerto Rico. In 2017, we monitored more than 3,000 incidents and sent our citywide incident coordinators to 759 incidents, such as water main breaks, fires, suspicious packages, and power outages. Our Notify NYC has sent out more than 1,500 messages. In September, we launched the Notify NYC mobile application that, in addition to growth in our traditional subscribership, now puts us at almost 725,000 registrants. We held and participated in 91 interagency exercises to make sure that plans are understood and necessary protocols for these plans are ready to be implemented as needed. Our community outreach and engagement activities continue to grow as we participated in almost 1,000 Ready New York events with more than 110,000 people attending, and we distributed more than 1 billion emergency planning guides. We graduated 12 new classes from our community emergency response team, our CERT team. These are volunteers. They have taken our total to just about 1,300 volunteers around the city. We hosted the Disaster Volunteer Conference in June and the Disabilities, Access, and Functional Needs Symposium in December. All of this is accomplished with the support of the federal government through various grants. We work with City Hall, Emergency Office of Management and Budget, the City Congressional Delegation, and our partner agencies to push for full Homeland Security funding which supports our critical operations. In the past year, New York City Emergency Management secured $25 million in federal funding, preliminarily from the Urban Area Security Initiative grant, which that grant provides $139 million in total to the city last year. I chair the New York City Urban Area Working Group, made up of New York City, Nassau and Suffolk counties in Long Island, Westchester County, Yonkers, and the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. The working group is instrumental in linking and coordinating regional activities, including joint training and exercises, public education and outreach, and the development of response protocols. This summer, New York City will host the National Homeland Security Conference. This is an annual meeting of local Homeland Security and emergency management professionals from the nation's largest metropolitan areas. It has become the best attended and most highly anticipated Homeland Security Emergency Management Conference of the year, and it focuses on emergency response principles at all levels of the government. We recommend the members of the subcommittee consider coming, maybe addressing the committee, the conferences. We have a number of different venues. We'd love to see you come in and meet some of our keynote speakers. Federal grant funding represents 50% of the budget of emergency management. That's our annual operating budget of $50 million, and it's vital to our ability to run many of our finest initiatives, including the Ready New York Public Education Program, our CERT, our volunteer program, our Continuity of Operations program, our location, our Geographic Information System, our training and exercise, which both gentlemen talked about, our Watch Command and Response, and the city's Incident Management System plan. It also funds the emergency supply stockpile, which provides supplies and services to support our emergency sheltering for adults, people with special medical needs, people with disabilities and accessibility and functional needs, children, infants, and companion animals. During a coastal storm or any emergency, the stockpile can meet the needs of 70,000 individuals in designated evacuation shelters across the city up to 7 days. And once that system goes in place, we have a backup system where contracts to come in and resupply as the need arises. So thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I look forward to continue working with Congress on the issue pertaining to emergency preparedness and response, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair now recognizes Chief Bellich.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Donovan, Ranking Member Payne, and Congressman King. My name is John Billich. I'm the Chief Security Officer of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. Thank you for inviting me to speak about this critical topic, securing our critical infrastructure assets and our strong partnership with the state, local, and federal stakeholders. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey conceives, builds, operates, and maintains infrastructure critical to New York and New Jersey regions' transportation and trade network. The assets we protect include 5 airports, including JFK, Newark, and LaGuardia. It's the largest aviation system in the country. 2 tunnels, 4 bridges, including the GWB, the world's busiest bridge. The Port Authority bus terminal, of which 8,000 buses pass through on a weekday, Monday to Friday. The PATH rail system, the ports of New York and New Jersey, and of course the World Trade Center complex. We utilize a robust, multi-layered security approach to protect the Port Authority's customers, the general public, employees, and critical infrastructure. The layers in this methodology include intelligence, measuring risk through a layered assessment process to drive investment in capital security and deployment, police prevention and interdiction methods, operational security measures to include contract security resources, the deployment of available and developing technologies, engineered hardened solutions, Office of Emergency Management to include response and recovery, federal, state, and regional partnerships, and of course we measure effectiveness, audit, and revise, and of course training. The multi-layered security approach is applied to all our facilities. Human assets. Our policing strategy is intelligence-led, as the Port Authority Police Department has a presence in 28 federal, state, and local law enforcement task forces, to include the FBI, JTTF in both New York and New Jersey. We are confident that we are connected to receive important and actionable intelligence and information. Our PAPD is highly competent professional police agency. It has a police command assigned 24/7 at each Port Authority critical infrastructure facility. Our policing methods include patrols, high visibility emergency service units, dedicated counterterrorism teams, as well as the assignment of explosive detection canine and radiation detection capabilities. Our police presence is supplemented by a contract security guard force of over 1,400 security officers who are trained in behavioral recognition techniques and counterterrorism awareness. These security officers are posted at critical locations throughout the system and also staff a 24/7 security operations center. In addition to our human assets, we have made significant investments in our capital security projects, as directed by our periodic program risk assessments that inform our investments to further strengthen our facilities. Since 2002, the Port Authority has spent over $1.4 billion in hardening its critical infrastructure, and for the coming years, we plan to spend nearly another $700 million to protect these assets. The use of technology is also of paramount importance. In addition to CCTV, we have robust control systems, perimeter intrusion detection systems, detection devices to help protect against seaborne threats, and of course, extensive background criminal history checks of anyone having access to a Port Authority facility, including outside contractors. In addition, we have created a new cybersecurity program to better monitor and respond to suspicious activities occurring on our network, therefore strengthening our capability to protect our critical information and our important industrial control systems. The Port Authority operates a 24/7 cybersecurity operations center that can receive and respond to threats to our network and equipment at any time, day or night. The Port Authority has its own Office of Emergency Management that's vital to this multi-layered protection approach. They lead our agency's business continuity program. They manage and administer agency-wide security grants. Another very important role for OEM is to plan and execute agency-wide training and full-scale exercises. These remarkable training programs, exclusively funded by grants that we receive from the federal government, involve both agency personnel and our regional first responders. To date, over 30,000 Port Authority staff and regional partners received emergency response training focused on active shooter response, rail emergency emergencies, aircraft emergencies, active terrorism, and other national and man-made hazards. Grant funding. The Port Authority maintains as a top priority, as evidenced by our investments in resources to make that purpose. Currently, agency-wide, 24% of all personnel and 22% of the operating budget are allocated to security. The federal grant funding programs are vital to the continuation of our security programs, which can never remain static or even worse, fall behind against the backdrop of ever-evolving threat landscape. A critical resource in this fight against those who wish to do us harm is this grant program. The funding source is essential to help us continue the security mission. Grant programs, including but not limited to the Transit Security Grant Program, the Urban Area Security Initiative, and the Port Security Grant Program, have long supported Port Authority security initiatives, including our counterterrorism initiatives, our police training and equipment, our World Trade Center transportation hub security initiatives, our cybersecurity programs, protection of our path underwater tunnels, protection of columns at the Port Authority bus terminal, our bollard protection, our installation of CCTV, and our maritime resiliency planning. Reducing the funding levels for these programs will have a direct and negative impact on the Port Authority's financial ability to maintain security at the necessary levels to meet the threat. Additionally, an increase in the period of performance from grant awards from 3 years to 5 years would allow us to plan larger scale and more effective security programs. Also, eliminating caps on the number of projects an agency can apply for would be extremely beneficial. Currently, the Port Security Grant Program only allows for the application of 3 to 5 projects. I would also like to highlight the importance of federal funding for canine teams. By screening the traveling public for explosives and explosive residue, canine teams provide a necessary layer of protection and are a critical element to the Port Authority counterterrorism program. As funding for these teams was recently called into question, we ask that the federal government reconsider reducing funding. The importance of information sharing and collaboration with our federal partners. We have a strong working relationship with various federal agencies and programs, to include DHS Office of Science and Technology, DHS Office of Health Affairs with the BioWatch program, the TSA Office of Requirements and Capability, DOD, DARPA's Radiation Detection Program, the DHS Safety Act Office. These partnerships are critical to information sharing regarding emergency security technology and have led to the development and pilot of a variety of programs at the Port Authority's vast array of multi-model facilities. These research arms of the federal government also need adequate funding to support the development and testing of future technologies, which aim to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of detection devices, screening devices, police personal safety devices, and so on. Additionally, the ability for federal entities to provide guidance on product capabilities will greatly aid agency decision makers in their selection of effective and proven technologies and equipment that would best protect the public and the infrastructure they depend upon. In closing, I would like to thank the members of the Emergency Preparedness Response and Communication Subcommittee and our congressional delegation for their continuing support that allows us to better serve our employees, customers, and better protect our regional critical transportation industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. The Chair now recognizes Director Neighbors.
Thank you. Chairman Donovan, Ranking Member Payne, and Representative King, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. I'm honored to speak on behalf of the dedicated professionals of the New Jersey Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness. We're working tirelessly to ensure the safety and security of the state of New Jersey, with responsibility to lead and coordinate New Jersey's counterterrorism, cybersecurity, and emergency preparedness efforts. Today, my remarks will focus on the work we are doing in New Jersey under Governor Murphy's leadership to reflect national priorities while building local capabilities to address risk and protect our communities. I will also discuss the resources necessary to maintain our ability to meet a constantly evolving threat landscape, our preparedness needs, and the importance of partnerships, vertical integration, and continuous improvement. DHS has prioritized identifying and mitigating national systemic risk. As we prioritize our efforts, we must look to the essential functions and systems that are vital to the safety and security of our communities. At all levels of government, we must work together in partnership and continue to evolve our focus. In doing so, we must ensure that resource investments reflect national trends and priorities. and not rely on constrained methods of analysis and allocation. States continue to build capabilities that address their distinctive risk factors. Those factors contribute to the nation's risk profile. In New Jersey, we have a number of risks inherent to the region that make its security important, not only for its residents and visitors, but also for the entire country. Our geographic location, involvement in financial markets, transportation infrastructure, and population density are all characteristics vital to the state, region, and national profile. As threats evolve, so do tactics. Recently, we've seen an evolution towards the use of unsophisticated methods to cause mass harm. This paradigm shift requires a move to rethink priorities at the strategic level, to ensure the right capabilities are built to prevent, protect against, respond to, and recover from acts that are difficult to predict, but easy to execute. Such ease of operation highlights the need for first preventers as well as first responders. In New Jersey, we have established cyclical programs founded in risk management principles to identify missing capabilities, triage and build the capabilities we need, teach and test them with our partners, and evaluate the process to begin with. We do this in all 21 counties of New Jersey. These programs build relationships, a holistic understanding of interdependencies and common vulnerabilities, and an awareness of capabilities available to identify and mitigate risk. However, these programs can only go as far as the resources available to them. My office serves as the administrator of all Homeland Security grant program funding for the state of New Jersey, the principal purpose of which is to build, sustain, and deliver national preparedness capabilities essential to achieving the national preparedness goal at the local level. Aside from financial support to buy down risk, DHS and FEMA have provided support to our efforts through both technical assistance and piloted programs. Of course, the most tangible support to states from the federal government to buy down risk is funding. In federal fiscal year 2017, New Jersey was allocated approximately $8 million in state Homeland Security grant program funding and approximately $20 million in urban area security initiative funding for the Jersey City Newark area. We understand that resources are finite. Thus, we strive to leverage funding both efficiently and effectively, knowing that spending the funds we are provided in a strategic, prioritized way can substantially buy down risk. Looking towards the future, our efforts to enhance capabilities through strategic planning and proper stewardship of grant funds will continue to support our dynamic risk environment. The threats we face are not static, so the methods we use to evaluate them and allocate resources cannot be aided. We must be forward-leaning to create cyclical programs that continuously improve upon our preparedness. Over the past 14 years, the stream of funding has created some reliance among the states. While initially designed to provide a capital infusion of funding for target capabilities after September 11, 2001, federal Homeland Security grant funds are now a resource on which many states and urban areas rely to sustain core capabilities. This reliance, combined with any downward variation in funding levels, create a significant impact, not only on a state's ability to pursue new capabilities, but simply the ability to maintain new ones, or current ones. DHS and FEMA have prioritized strengthening grants management, increasing transparency, and improving data analytics. We welcome continued discussion on current funding allocation methods and innovative ways to incentivize further capability building among states. Chairman Donovan, Ranking Member Payne, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, I thank you again for the opportunity to testify today. By acting together and with the necessary resources available, we will continue to adapt to meet the current threat environment and effectively prepare for the future. I look forward to your questions and yield back to the Chairman.
Thank you very much, Director. I say this at every hearing that we conduct, that we don't waste witnesses' time. This committee, every hearing that we've held, we've had a product come out of it from the testimony of all witnesses. Chief Don hosted us in a field hearing back last year when we talked about transit grants. And one of the issues that came up was the ability to perform within 3-year time period of the grant. And I passed legislation in the House that extends that now to 4 years, and we're waiting for the Senate to act on it. So your testimony is invaluable to us, and we will act on it. I'd like to ask all of you, I have specific questions, but I'd like to ask all of you, how can we help better? What are the obstacles that you see in dealing with the federal government? What are the regulations, the things that are in place that are obstructing you from doing your job better? What are the things that we don't have in place that you would like to see come to fruition to allow you to protect our city and in turn our entire nation better than you already do, and you do an incredible job already.
Well, I'll start. I mean, the cooperation that I see with the federal government, the state, the city, just never been better. And keeping that funding going would be the most important thing. But the funding that we do get, the emergency management, again, 50% of my operating budget is very important to maintain it. If we were to lose part of that, I'd have to close some of my doors. I mean, as I said earlier, 70,000 people would be supplied for 7 days. That's something directly related to the grants. And originally when those grants came out, a lot of the agencies, we bought a lot of equipment, maintenance of that, but there was a limit on the percentage of money we spend on personnel. And at this point in the grant process, I think it would be helpful, I know for my agency, if we could maybe stretch that a little bit, instead of keeping it at 50%, be able to spend a little more on personnel. Do the maintenance of the equipment, so we'd like to be able to maybe hire some more people. We're doing more, and we need people to do some of those things. So if we could adjust that a bit, we would appreciate that. Also, maybe be able to put some of the money to capital projects, expand my agency, and I know they're always growing. We could use more space. A lot of times the city does not have the money to expand our buildings, our facilities. I maintain 3 warehouses, one in Long Island, one in Jersey, and one in Brooklyn. If we could use some of that money for capital projects, extending my building or some of these factories, that would be very, very helpful.
So I would just like to add a little different than sort of a funding stream, but more of a formalized relationship with DHS Science and Technology and TSA as it relates to emerging technology, what works. We go through a very time-consuming process of looking to identify technology, and we go through sort of the very cumbersome process of procuring it and, of course, implementing it. As Congressman King had mentioned earlier, the whole notion of that we've got tremendous throughput through open transportation facilities. We have a multi-layered approach in looking to safeguard folks, but detection types of capabilities that are now being developed, while maybe not at light speed, is something that we'd like to be in front of. And frankly, I think the vetting of that and the trial and error should be done at the federal level and then identified to the locals to implement, rather than all of us individually looking at sort of all the different types of things that happen.
I'd like to pick up kind of on the shoulders of both of my colleagues, which is, I don't want to spend too much time on money, because it always boils down to grant funding, but our grant funding has been being reduced a little bit at a time every year. And our threat picture has not been being reduced. It's actually more changed and increased in many measures. Aside from the funding, we're facing additional challenges that call for increased research, development, technology, all of which costs money, but also potentially legislation. One area which I do not need to introduce the committee members in detail to is encryption. We are in a place where we are increasingly finding that we are going darker and darker to the point that we're already dark on communications between terrorist groups, because communications providers and hardware manufacturers who make the telephones have designed them in such a way that no legal process, no order from New York State Supreme Court Justice or a Supreme Court Justice of the United States can grant the access that for over 250 years in this country has been available to judicial process from an independent court with probable cause. This is an increasing factor in investigations where we have become, possibly as a victim of our own success, to be expected to prevent these terrorist acts before they happen. Another area is the area of drones. Increasingly, we are seeing terrorist groups overseas not only experiment with, but execute deadly operations using drones for increased numbers of civilian sales across the country. And while in New York, we have laws because of the type of airspace we are in between three airports that govern the use of drones. We have few paltry tools to prevent the use of drones in a terrorist attack. Legislation that would allow for that has not been forthcoming. Right now, if we had the technology, say working with DHS Science and Technology to develop a way to take over a drone, disable it, land it, or otherwise control it, that would be considered air piracy under the current statutes, even if executed by a legitimate law enforcement agency like the New York City Police Department. So I think we need to take a hard look at these things. It will be easy to pass this law, to focus on this legislation, develop this technology after an incident using a drone as a weapon occurs on U.S. soil. We have already seen it overseas. I think it would be worth all of our time to focus on this while it's still hard, on the idea that in the long run that may be easier.
The value of grant money is that we can think about the next attack. So too often when we think about grants is how do you maintain what you have, how do you do what everybody else is doing. That's not enough. As John talked about drones, what does that next type of attack look like? And by maintaining the grants allows us to think that way and share that information across other jurisdictions. One of the areas that we're thinking about at great length and working with the partners at this table is one of the cyber attacks. And too often we think of a cyber attack as just a bunch of people on a keyboard causing havoc. What we're considering now is a cyber attack with physical consequences, physical effects. So as we move forward, that's our next challenge and why we need support from the federal government, that we're able to not only manage the cyber side of the attack, but also the physical effects. And I think Congressman Payne, your comments earlier that homeland security is just as important as military budgets. I think that moving forward, as we think about the value of grant funding, it's protecting the homeland and what it also protect our military folks overseas.
Just one, just one other thing I want to add, the importance of the continuation of funding. Many have spoken about the evolving trend. The port we spent over $100 million on evolving, and that was all about the needed. And of course, after the most recent events have happened, both abroad and just at the doorstep of the World Trade on the West Side Highway, we took another look and we initiated 3 additional projects that sort of, because it's the new, and that's going to continue to happen. So the continuation of what's available and the nimbleness in that money to be able to adjust is paramount.
I'd put a fine point on all these gentlemen's comments and just say, I think providing incentives for innovation, mentioned in my comments as far as abilities to create and enhance those programs to get out ahead and prevent are going to be vital going forward. That's the flexibility in how grant guidance goes out, what we can do within the construct of the grant programs themselves with DHS and FEMA, I think are going to be huge pieces. And I would echo that partnership across from New Jersey's perspective. It really is regional. Any of the attacks that have been referenced have had some nexus to New Jersey. Saipov, for example, rented a truck in New Jersey, in the West Side Highway. So we want to make sure we have the ability to work within the region and coordinate directly. We have fantastic partnerships from the federal to the local level. Commissioner Miller and I were together just a couple days ago, actually, at a boat launch on Friday. And those partnerships get us through these issues, but we can do more to focus the funding, innovate together on front end piece to get out ahead.
Thank you, Director. The Chair now recognizes the Ranking Member, Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to piggyback on Mr. Maples' point just now, we are just linked by commonality between the 2 areas. It's just a fact of life. It is with the first attempt to take down the towers from the bottom, the terrorists that perpetrated that were living in Maplewood, New Jersey, in my district, before they attempted that attack. So we're always going to be linked in this commonality around security. And let me ask you, Mr. Maple, the grants under the Urban Areas Security Initiative in the State Homeland Security Grants Program are determined in part or in whole by FEMA's risk assessment. Do you believe that the risk assessment formula and the methodology provide an accurate assessment of the risk in New Jersey?
I'd say for the most part, yes, but there's definitely room for improvement. You mentioned the word transparency, and when I look at the qualitative measurement of the risk inherent to the algorithm, I think that there's probably some more room for transparency and also inclusion of those regional issues we talked about. We really can go down the list of all these incidents that have happened, and there has been at least a nexus, whether they be planned, trained for, attacked from, rented, whatever the issue may be, in New Jersey. And I think that it would definitely be more beneficial to have a little bit more transparency into that allocate of the problem itself, the computation of those risks, and how we actually approach them. So I think while our threat level has remained somewhat static, Donato mentioned that we went from 76 or 65 on the last draft. I'd say I don't know that that's fully represented in what we're risking or what we're dealing with in New Jersey. We're members of the executive and also to the detective level of the JPTS in Newark, New York, and Philadelphia. So we actually have this broad brush across this region. It's a little bit different and very unique across the country. And I think it would be beneficial to show that regional approach in the funding application as tied to the risk assessment.
Mr. Ranking Member, I think just to expand on that, and far be it from me as a representative from the NYPD to lobby for money for New Jersey.
You're always welcome to.
Well, my real point is it's an important partnership because the partnership between New Jersey's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness as well as the Newark JPTF in New York City is seamless. As you point out, the 1993 World Trade Center bombers operated from New Jersey, built the bomb in New Jersey, lived in New Jersey, leveraged a New Jersey chemical company to buy the components to make that bomb. But if you look at the 9/11 attackers, a full cell of 9/11 pilots and operators lived and trained in New Jersey, having apartments in Patterson. Mr. Almonte and Mr. Alessa, both of whom tried to join a designated foreign terrorist organization, Al-Shabaab, were right across the river in New Jersey while discussing plotting attacks there and in New York City. The West Side attacker who drove that pickup truck, Saifullah Saipov, lived in Patterson, New Jersey as well. The Chelsea bomber, Ahmed Rahimi, came out of the Fred Amboy Linden area where he was captured in a shootout with Linden, New Jersey police officers who knew of his description. Exactly. So I think when we factor the New Jersey piece in terms of targets, it may not be as rich a target environment as New York City in some ways. So it has industry, it has public transportation, and urban areas. But you cannot separate it within this UASI from the New York threat. History has told us that over and over again, which is the attack may be more likely in New York City, but it is also more likely that the plotting and planning of that attack may not be.
And I'll yield in the interest of time and we can maybe come back.
Certainly. The gentleman yields. The chair recognizes Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Seeing Mr. Miller and Mr. Pfeiffer, Mr. Esposito, it's like old home week. Except that the threats are still there. They're different threats, but after all these years, Mr. Phillips, you were NYPD. So I guess I would ask, how receptive do you find the federal government to listening to what you have to say? The reason I ask that is every year when we see $300 million cut from UASI and all these numbers, it seems like we're going through the same motions over here, do you have an audience down there? Do you have people who are receptive? I'm not saying they have to agree with you and everything, but do you have an ongoing dialogue as these threats are changing? I mean, the threats today, still Al-Qaeda, ISIS, those threats, but the nature of the threats is changing every month, every year, certainly. Do you have an audience? And if I go to Mr. Miller, I can call him by his first name, Commissioner?
I'm glad we're going to we always had a hotline to DHS. Under successive secretaries, we've been able to meet personally with the DHS secretary. The DHS secretary will be in New York this week at the Leadership in Counterterrorism Conference, where we will have a separate audience with her to pass on those concerns. Although, typically, as I'm sure you're aware, our communications with DHS are crystal clear, and because of their intelligence and analysis function, they're right into the threat. It's not that they don't understand the threat. To us, the hazard can always be when that leaves DHS and goes into the Office of Management and Budget. Sometimes it doesn't come out.
If I could just interrupt you if I would, and I'm not trying to create a feeling, even though I already have one with Mulvaney. How much of this problem comes from management and budget as opposed to Homeland Security? And I'm not trying to view in the spot with them, but I mean, Mulvaney is out to school in New York and everything that, and it's just another manifestation of it. It's true.
Well, this has always been a challenge for us, and it started with, the first discussions about reimbursing New York City for the extraordinary efforts around the protection package for Trump Tower before the election and after the election. So, from where I sit, I do not fully understand the internecine battles or the strange machinations that occur between an executive branch agency, the Office of Management and Budget, and our appropriators. But I do appreciate this committee's understanding of those and their voice for us in those discussions to fight to keep those appropriations where they should be, because you, as well, understand the dynamics of this threat environment, which are extreme.
Also, on first name basis, Chief?
Just to follow with John, the relationship with DHS and particularly intelligence and analysis, we have this back and forth collaboration. We actually do secure civics on a regular basis, and that's important. I think what you're seeing here is that the people at the table, the people down in D.C. that are creating this network fusion of information. It's no longer this one agency and they do all the work. It's this fusion that comes among the people at this table. Some of the people coming from the last panel with the FBI. It's sharing information, sharing intelligence, and challenging each other to look at the problem from different perspectives. Now, when it comes to the Office of Management and Budget, that's a little different. That's more of a political fight or a political challenge between the city and the federal government, which we're always looking to limit those cutbacks. Because the work we have to do is tremendous and it's not stopping.
What's wrong? Yes, Paul?
Yeah, well, look, I think we'll see what comes out of this committee to see if we're heard or not. But yeah, I think we are being heard for the most part. Just to give an example, we use the wireless emergency alert system. It's only been in place since 2012, but we've only used it 8 times. We used it during a couple of snowstorms, during Hurricane Sandy, but most recently during the Chelsea bombing. And it worked well, but we had some limitations to it. We brought those limitations to your attention, and we made some changes. So we are being heard. We think there's more changes that can be done with that. We're going to be a lot more effective. But I think the work of this committee goes a long way in having us being heard in DC. So I want to thank you for that.
I think last year the committee did almost double the amount of UASI funding that's requested by the administration. Spillage.
Yes, sir. I would say that the relationship with DHS is very strong, very receptive to our needs. Particularly as it relates to sort of our concerns with both the sharing of information related to security technology and so on. When it comes to the actual grants, the question that you posed, I'm always a bit perplexed with how we don't get things. I mean, I think all our applications are data-driven, they're based on risk. I think we have the highest risk in the nation in our area. So anytime we get less than what we ask for, I think that they're not using the same methodology that we are.
Rivers?
Well, first of all, my background, I came from the CIA system, most of my career there. One of my mentors said to me when I first started that you should build relationships like your life depends on it, because it does. And I would say in New Jersey, certainly we're bringing that to the table, and that goes from the federal down to the local level. In my experience, over the last 9 months I've been director, our relationship with the federal government, with DHS, has been good. We definitely don't always agree on everything, but it is, I have noticed some reception. We're having an engagement and conversation, and that's a big start in addition to being able to appear in front of you, distinguished gentlemen, to have this conversation and let us voice our concerns, but then also open our arms and say we're here and want to make sure we participate in partnership as well.
If I could say in closing, I've been with the committee now the whole 15, 16 years, whatever it is. I think Don and Dan would agree with me. You go to the rest of the country, nothing compares to New York, New Jersey. You take the whole New York region, New Jersey region is doing probably together more than the rest of the country combined as far as local and state efforts. So thank all of you and your agencies and departments for what we do.
Maybe do a lightning round, one question each, and I think I know the answer to this, but I would love to get it on the record. In 2012, Congress created FirstNet, which would require emergency responders to get off the T-band by 2020, so they could auction off the T-band. I understand this is an incredible risk doing this to our public safety. It's an incredible expense and effort that would have to be undertaken by our emergency responders. Can you just, in 30 seconds each, tell me how this requirement of your communications getting off of T-band and onto FirstNet will affect the public safety?
I think to start, first of all, getting off of T-band, we have nowhere to go. It offers that same capability. FirstNet isn't ready. FirstNet isn't capable of delivering what we have on T-band now. It can deliver other things, but picture it as if somebody said, your headquarters is decrepit and not up on technology, and we're going to move you into a brand new building. And then they said, this will be the day you move out. And the brand new building wasn't there, and it wasn't ready, and it didn't have anything in it. That is the position we're being put in by the idea that there's this impending deadline coming up where we're going to have to leave this real estate within the radio band, where there's no guarantee on the other side that there is anything capable for a major urban area like New York City, or even smaller major urban areas that can handle the kinds and types and volume of radio traffic, push-to-talk, voice communications, and so on. The new system would rely on things like Wi-Fi, things like fiber, but things that have failed in multiple disasters. If you look at everything from 9/11 to the Northeast blackout to picture disaster, the one thing that's always held up in New York City, when everything else broke down, was our radio system. And until we see something that has equal or greater capability, we need to stick with what we have.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, I would second that too. Communications is critical. We need to be able to talk to each other. And to go to a system that's not proven is very not only very difficult, but it's at great risk. So we're skeptical on making that transition unless we can prove it out.
Espo?
Yeah, I mean, look, I was involved with this in my prior life at the FirstNet for a long time ago, and not much was said about giving up T-band back then. It was a great system. It's going to let us communicate nationwide with all the emergency responders. It's terrific. piece of equipment, but we just can't give up the T-band. That's how we communicate now, especially these folks, and they wouldn't be able to communicate properly if we give the T-band, so we just can't do that.
Effect on public safety, Chief?
Yeah, I mean, not much more today. We have safety concerns.
Director? Thank you. Mr. Ranking Member?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really quickly, even with your organizations receiving grant funding, we know that there are still quite a few unmet needs. What are the security-related needs that currently go unmet, and what are the funding gaps in FEMA's preparedness grants? If you could quickly just give one example, maybe.
I think one of the critical areas we face has already been covered by the discussion today in an earlier panel and here, which is we have a massive transit system. It carries 5.6 million people a day. If it were a major city, it would be a huge American urban area, yet it's extraordinarily safe in that we have about one index crime there a day. So very safe from crime, very well policed. But mass transit has been a favorite target of terrorists. I don't need to enumerate the plots. I know you all know those from your work. And it is a place where we are always looking to build capability. But because of the size and complexity of the system, it would require additional assistance.
Thank you. Chief?
The concern that I have is mass transit, because it's always a concern with such large amounts of people. But the concern, as we brought up earlier, is our high-rise buildings. And because they hold massive amounts of people. And that's what we're really concerned about, that this could be the next type of 9/11 attack. So we need support from federal grants to look into it, develop procedures, and to share those procedures across the country.
Thank you.
Pardon me, I said it earlier, I think some of the restrictions that are on some of the spending of the money, we have the equipment, we always use equipment when new things come up, but a little bit of flexibility in how we can spend it with the percentage of personnel, and maybe some money to go to some capital improvements.
Well, our facilities are, we have this mix of both new and old, and the area itself is old, and there's a lot of aging infrastructure. The ability to sort of continually harden that, we've made tremendous investment in doing that, but there's still a ways to go. As it relates to the new facilities that we're building, the capital security elements are baked into the design, and that also probably ups the cost by about 30%. So the recognition of that, we have these older types of facilities and so on that we've got to secure. And it's going to be, our region's an older region than other areas of the country. So I think that's an important part.
So I just continue to emphasize the point of innovation. So we maintain the capabilities, but then also the ability to innovate within as threats emerge and evolve. Cyber being a huge one that was mentioned in the last panel as well. There's emerging threats that are out there that we have to be able to invest in up front to try to get out ahead of those problems. Items like mass gatherings, vehicle ramming, soft targets, those type of issues, we want to make sure we hit head on up front and be able to innovate into those areas, training, exercise, awareness. I want to ensure we make the suspicious activity reporting system. It's been very effective in New Jersey. I want to do more. I want to innovate throughout that process. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. Chair recognizes Mr. King.
All of you have heard enough from me over the years. I just want to thank you for your testimony today. Thank you for the great work you do, and ask you to continue to do it. Thank you very much.
And that's why he's the distinguished former chair. I want to thank all witnesses for their testimony, and the members for their questions. The members of the subcommittee may have some additional questions for our witnesses that we'll ask you to respond to in writing. Pursuant to Committee Rule 7D, the hearing record will be held open for 10 days. Without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.